Ready for a deep dive into the Pacific theater of World War II. Today's a little different.
Oh,
We're focusing on one source, a YouTube video, War in the Pacific by YarnHub.
okay.
And we'll use it to uncover these, lesser known stories, human moments from this massive conflict,
Yeah, what often gets lost are those, individual experiences.
Right.
The split-second decisions, the luck involved
Yeah.
that really shaped how things played out.
Totally. So we're not just talking battles and outcomes, it's the people, incredible skill, bravery,
hmm
and that ever-present chance, good or bad, hanging over everything.
And sometimes, honestly, those stories tell you more than just the, the official reports.
Absolutely. Let's jump in with the Battle of Midway, June 4th, 1942.
Big one, pivotal.
Fate of the Pacific hanging by a
It
thread.
really could have gone either way at that point.
And it all came down to, like you said, incredible feats, near misses, and yeah, luck played a part.
For sure.
The video, it really captures the tension, especially the American dive bomber attack.
Yeah.
These guys were low on fuel, flying into a mess, and their actions, man, they changed everything.
Speaks to their training, their skill, but also got to have guts to do that.
Lieutenant Richard Halsey Best, his story, it's wild. He wasn't supposed to be the hero, but fate had other plans, right?
Right.
Picture this. You're leading a squadron, low on fuel, searching for the Japanese fleet.
The stakes don't get much higher.
Your window's closing, and then boom, you spot it, the Kido Butai, the heart of their navy.
The Japanese, they were aiming for a knockout at Midway, clear the way for them to control the Pacific.
And for a while, it looked dicey for us. They'd had some big wins early in the war, right?
Yeah, Pearl Harbor was still fresh in everyone's mind.
But they didn't count on American intelligence. We'd intercepted their communications.
Game changer. That's how we knew they were coming, set up our defenses.
Exactly. So you've got Best and his squadron diving towards what they think is their target.
Oh,
And out of nowhere, another wave of American dive bombers appears. Yeah, they were from the Yorktown, had no idea. Best and his guys were converging on the same target, the carrier Kaga.
talk about a near disaster. A mid-air collision at that speed, forget about it.
Best said later it felt just like regular battle practice. That's how calm he was.
Oh.
But he doesn't hesitate, sees those other bombers, instantly decides he's going for the Akagi, the flagship of the entire Japanese fleet.
And he's down to just his two wingmen at this point, right?
Yep, the rest of his squadron, they thought he'd aborted, peeled off.
Wow.
Talk about guts. So they make their run, dodging fire, enemy fighters,
I
everything.
can't even imagine.
And Best, he puts a single bomb right through the flight deck of the Akagi.
One bomb.
One bomb. You might think, so what? But this wasn't just any hit.
Had to be something big.
It ignited a chain reaction, hit a fuel cart, massive explosion that crippled the entire ship,
Wow, so that one bomb.
changed the course of the battle. The Akagi, along with 3 other Japanese carriers, gone, sunk.
Turning point in the Pacific right there.
Sure, but victory always comes at a price.
Best's wingman, Ensign Frederick Weber, shot down during that attack.
A reminder that even in those moments of, elation, war, it's never far away.
And it gets worse. Best, he had to wait hours to rejoin the fight.
Yeah.
Adrenaline pumping, wants to get back in there, but sometimes the toughest battles are the ones against yourself,
Discipline, restraint, totally different kind of courage.
Speaking of courage, let's jump to December 13th, 1943. Assam, India meets 2nd Lieutenant Philip R. Adair. This guy embodies that never give up spirit.
I'm ready.
What's cool, the YarnHub video, it actually has audio of Adair himself telling his own story.
No way.
Yeah, so you're hearing it straight from him, the emotion, the tension in his voice as he describes that day.
Chills.
So picture it. Adair scrambled to intercept what he thinks is 4 enemy planes. Easy, right?
Sounds routine.
But as he gets closer, it's not 4 planes, but 4 entire flights of bombers, each with 6 planes plus a swarm of fighters.
He's going up against, over 60 planes? Outnumbered, outgunned, facing impossible odds. He knew those bombers were headed for his base, including the hospital. He thought to himself, and this is him saying it, look, they're going to be releasing their bombs pretty quick, and I don't know if I can do much of anything or not. I'm going to do the best I can to mess up their attack.
Wow.
What does he do? Charges in, one man against over 60 Japanese planes.
You're kidding.
Dives in, guns blazing, targeting the bombers, anything to disrupt them. And get this, it worked. The bombs missed their target.
No way.
But Adair, he wasn't done. He could have turned back, called it a day. Instead, what does he do?
He did.
He goes back in for another attack run.
Get out of here.
This time, he manages to take out a Zero fighter, sends it spiraling down in flames.
Incredible.
Of course, now he's public enemy number 1. The remaining Zeros are on him.
Oh.
It's a miracle he made it out of there. His plane, Lulu Bell, shot to pieces, but he manages to fly her back towards base.
Wow, what a pilot.
Except, and this is where it gets really crazy, the damage was so bad he couldn't keep the nose up. In a moment of desperation, he later said, "And then I got smart. I'll just turn it upside down and see what happens."
Upside down.
Upside down. And it worked. He'd flip the plane, climb, then flip back when the engine sputtered. Kept doing this until he was close enough to the base to attempt a landing. Upside down.
Can't even imagine.
Flipped her right at the last second, landed safely, his 44th mission, walked away with a silver star.
He earned that one.
Adair's story, it's about bravery, sure, but it's also about ingenuity, resilience, refusing to give up, even when the odds are stacked against you.
What a story. What do you think drove these guys to keep going, mission after mission?
It's a question that haunts me. Was it duty, patriotism, something more?
Maybe a bit of everything.
Yeah.
It takes a certain kind of person to face that kind of danger day after day.
Okay, for our next story, we're going to the waters off Malaya. 2 of Britain's most powerful warships about to face a threat they never saw coming.
This is about the Prince of Wales and the Repulse, right?
You got it. It's December 10th, 1941, just days after Pearl Harbor. The world's still in shock. Yeah.
And here we have these 2 powerful warships sailing right into the jaws of the enemy.
Weren't they supposed to intercept a Japanese invasion force?
That was the plan. Problem was, they were operating under the assumption they had air cover, which they didn't.
Uh-oh.
You also got to remember back then, the British, they thought their ships were invincible. The idea that Japanese bombers could sink them, unthinkable.
A blind spot for sure. And a dangerous one.
Tell me about it. The Japanese, they caught them completely by surprise. First wave of bombers went for the Repulse. Now this ship, she put up a hell of a fight, dodging torpedoes left and right.
Sounds like she was dancing with death out there.
The Prince of Wales, though, not so lucky.
Oh.
She was hit early on by a bunch of torpedoes, messed up her steering, caused a lot of flooding below decks.
Bad news.
And this is all happening while they're being bombed and strafed by Japanese aircraft. Can you imagine the chaos on those decks?
Must have been terrifying. Those battleships were sitting duck. It was a massacre. The Japanese, they kept coming wave after wave, pounding those ships relentlessly.
It changed everything, you know? The idea that these huge battleships, the pride of the Navy, could be sunk by planes.
Revolutionized naval warfare.
Completely. Suddenly everyone had to rethink their strategies.
So the Repulse, brave as she was, eventually succumbed. Sank beneath the waves right alongside the Prince of Wales. But here's where it gets even crazier.
It gets crazier.
Oh, yeah. 2023, just last year, the Malaysian Coast Guard, they caught a Chinese ship looting the wrecks.
Seriously.
No kidding. They were down there trying to salvage metal and anything else they could get their hands on. Talk about history coming back to bite you.
It's like those shipwrecks. They hold this grip on our imagination even after all these years.
It's a reminder that the past, it's never really gone, is it?
Nope. And sometimes it's got a funny way of popping back up when you least expect it.
Speaking of the past coming back, ready for a story about revenge, meticulous planning, and a high-stakes assassination attempt that'll make your head spin.
Hit me with it.
We're talking about the mission to take out Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto.
The guy behind Pearl Harbor.
That's the one. But this wasn't just about getting even. Yamamoto, he was brilliant, a real strategic mind. Taking him out, it was about crippling the entire Japanese war effort.
I can see that.
And they were willing to pull out all the stops to make it happen. They were tracking his movements for weeks, intercepting messages, analyzing his routines, like something out of a spy movie.
High stakes.
You said it. Finally, they got their break. Intel came through that Yamamoto was scheduled to visit Bougainville on April 18th, 1943.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, this was a one-shot deal. Small window of opportunity, and they had to take it.
What was the plan?
They were sending in a squadron of P-38 Lightning fighters deep into enemy territory to intercept Yamamoto's bomber.
Those P-38s, they were fast.
The fastest thing we had at the time, but still, risky as hell. They were relying on perfect timing, and let's face it, a little luck to pull this off.
I bet the pressure was immense.
No doubt. They assembled a squadron of the best pilots they could find, led by a guy named Rex Barber. Can you imagine being in their shoes? flying all that way, low over the water, knowing that if they were spotted, it was all over.
Couldn't even imagine.
They reached Bougainville, and at first it seemed like it was going to work, but then
What happened?
they spotted not one, but two 220 Betty bombers escorted by 6 Zero fighters. They were expecting 3, double the targets, double the trouble.
Oh, man, what did they do?
They decided to engage.
Seriously, I mean, they were already outnumbered.
They didn't hesitate. But here's where it gets wild. Remember Rex Barber, the squadron leader?
Yeah, the guy in charge.
One of his pilots, Besby Holmes, his drop tanks, they wouldn't detach.
Oh, man, those things are crucial.
Right. You need those for the extra fuel, but gotta dish them before combat.
Wow.
Holmes's wingman, Raymond Hine, he peeled off to cover him, leaving Barber alone with the Zeros.
Talk about being in the hot seat.
Talk about pressure. But Barber, he didn't back down. Their squadron leader, he gave the order, take out both bombers. So, Barber, bullets flying everywhere, picks a bomber, goes in for the kill, nails it, chases it down to treetop level. The bomber crashes, explodes, huge fireball.
Head down.
But not out of the woods yet. Those Zeros are still on him. He's dodging fire, trying to get a clear shot at the second bomber.
Must have been intense.
And just when he thinks he's in the clear, guess what?
Nah.
He's in the line of fire from his own squadron. They mistook him for the enemy.
Oh, no. Friendly fire.
Almost. Thankfully, they recognized him at the last second. But can you imagine? After all that, he still goes after the second bomber.
This guy's got ice in his veins.
He spots it. Holmes and Hine are on its tail. He joins the chase.
It was like a scene out of a movie, huh?
Better than the movies. Holmes is giving it everything, but that bomber just won't.
Stoked.
Tough bird. Finally, Barber sees his opening, dives in, lines up a shot, fires, hits the fuel tank, boom!
Yeah.
Massive explosion.
Got him.
He flew right through the explosion, somehow came out the other side.
Oh.
Turns out that first bomber he shot down, Yamamoto was on it.
They got him.
Mission accomplished. But, like we said, there's always a price. Raymond Hine, his P-38 went down. He didn't make it.
Yeah, that's rough.
A reminder that even in victory, there's loss. But there's another twist to this story.
Oh, wow.
Motomi Ugaki, Yamamoto's second in command, he was on that second bomber.
No way.
He was pulled from the wreckage, badly hurt, but alive.
Wow, what are the odds?
And that's where things get really heavy. Ugaki, he blamed himself for surviving, couldn't forgive himself for outliving Yamamoto.
Survivor's guilt?
Exactly. He wrote about it in his diary, haunted by guilt, what he saw as his failure to protect Yamamoto.
It's amazing how these events, they can stay with you, you know.
Absolutely. And for Ugaki, it was too much. When the war was winding down, he took part in that last kamikaze attack.
No way.
Yeah. A final act of sacrifice, maybe his way of trying to make things right.
Powerful story. Okay, so we talked about Adair, we talked about Yamamoto. What's next?
Now it's time for a ship that became a legend, a symbol of just how tough the American Navy could be. The USS Laffey.
The Laffey. I think I've heard of this ship.
She's actually in the Yarn Hub video twice because she was in 2 of the most insane battles in the Pacific. First up, the night battle of Guadalcanal.
Guadalcanal. That was a rough one, wasn't it?
Brutal doesn't even begin to describe it. November 13th, 1942. It's the dead of night, pitch black, and the Americans are sailing straight into a trap.
A trap? How so?
The Japanese were waiting for them, and they were ready to throw everything they had at us.
Oh, man. Talk about bad timing.
Our guys were outnumbered, outgunned, the whole deal. And in the middle of it all, you've got the Laffey, a destroyer, going up against the Japanese battleship Hai.
Okay, hold on. A destroyer versus a battleship. That's like bringing a knife to a gunfight.
That's exactly what it was. The Hai, massive guns, thick armor. It was like a floating fortress compared to the Laffey.
So what do?
They did what they had to do. They fought like hell, fired everything they had at the Hai. Those 5-inch guns on the Laffey, they were spitting fire.
I bet. But against a battleship.
It was a suicide run, basically. They were trying to buy time for the rest of the American fleet to get into position. And they scored some hits on the Hai, damaged her superstructure, knocked out some of her guns.
He did. Wow. That's impressive.
It was incredible. But the Hai, she was a beast. She hammered the Laffey and the USS Cushing, which was fighting alongside her.
What happened to the Cushing?
The Cushing was obliterated, vaporized, just gone.
It's just like that.
The Laffey knew she couldn't win. Her captain, Commander William Hank, he ordered his men to fire torpedoes, hoping for a miracle.
Did they hit?
They bounced harmlessly off the Hai's hull. They were so close that the torpedoes didn't even have time to arm.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's rough.
With the Laffey taking heavy fire, Hank gave the order to abandon ship.
Can you imagine that moment? knowing your ship is going down.
Surrounded by fire, explosions, men screaming, the water itself on fire from the burning oil. It would be terrifying.
You've been like something out of hell.
It was, but even though they had to abandon ship, they'd done their job. The Laffey and the other destroyers, they had bought enough time for the rest of the American fleet to engage, and they did some serious damage to the High in the process.
So even though they lost the Laffey?
They won the battle.
Exactly.
Not quite. They did cripple the High. She was so badly damaged that she had to withdraw from the battle and was eventually sunk by American aircraft.
Wow. So what about the Laffey? Did she go down?
You're not going to believe this. She didn't sink.
Get out after all that.
She was beat up, sure, but she was still afloat. The crew, many of whom had been fished out of the water, they got back on board, and somehow they sailed her back to port.
That's incredible. Talk about a ship that wouldn't die. But something tells me that wasn't the end of the story for the Laffey, was it?
Oh, you know it wasn't. Her story at Guadalcanal was just the beginning. She had another date with destiny, and this time it would be even more terrifying, even more unbelievable. But that story's going to have to wait for after the break. All right, so we left off talking about the incredible USS Laffey. But for our next story, we're leaving the sea behind, heading back into the skies over New Guinea, 1944. This is where we meet Neil Kirby, American ace pilot, gunning for a record.
An ace pilot. Those guys are something else.
Kirby flew P-47 Thunderbolts, and let me tell you, he was good.
The Thunderbolt, wasn't that one of the, heavier fighters?
Yeah, not exactly known for being nimble. Powerful, though, real bruiser of a plane.
And Kirby, he made it work for him.
He knew how to use its strengths, that's for sure. He was all about this boom and zoom technique, using the P-47's dive power to make these quick, devastating attacks.
So dive in, hit him hard, climb back up, and do it again.
You got it. And it worked. He racked up an impressive kill count, and this was during that time when everyone was chasing Eddie Rickenbacker's record, 26 victories from World War I.
Right, that was the number to beat.
Kirby was getting close. He had 21 victories already. Ambition was burning.
I bet. You don't get to be an ace without a bit of ambition, right?
So, March 5th, 1944, Kirby and two of his buddies, Bill Dunham and Sam Blair, they're on a fighter sweep. They spot a group of Japanese bombers, Ki-48 Lilies, flying low.
And for a little boom and zoom.
Exactly. Dunham and Blair, they take out two of the bombers right away, no problem.
What about Kirby?
He runs into a bit of a snag. He hit his target, but the bomber, it's stubborn, wouldn't go down.
One of those days, huh?
And here's where that line between bravery and, maybe being a little too bold gets crossed.
Oh.
Kirby, he wants that kill. He's so focused on finishing off that bomber that he forgets one of his own rules. Never lose speed or altitude in a fight.
Got tunnel vision.
He circled back for another pass, slowed down, and that's when a Japanese Ki-43 Oscar fighter saw his chance.
Oh, no.
That Oscar pounced, riddled Kirby's Thunderbolt with bullets. Dunham, he saw the whole thing, broke off his attack and went after the Oscar.
What happened?
Shot it down. But it was too late for Kirby. His plane went into the water, gone.
They ever find him?
Never did. Missing in action.
That's awful. I can't imagine what Dunham must have felt.
Yeah, he blamed himself for not being there to protect Kirby.
War, it's more than just battles, isn't it?
That's putting it mildly. But it gets even more complicated. 9 months later, Dunham's on another mission, this time over the Philippines. He shoots down another Ki-43.
Another one.
This time, as he's watching the enemy plane go down, he sees the pilot bail out. Now, Dunham could have easily shot him.
I mean, it was war, right?
Exactly. But he doesn't. He flies closer, watches the Japanese pilot floating in the water, and then...
What do you do?
He takes off his own life jacket and throws it out of the cockpit, hoping it would reach the enemy pilot.
Yeah.
He saved him. After everything.
In the middle of all that chaos, he chooses compassion, sees a fellow pilot in need, not an enemy.
That's incredible.
There's actually a painting of it, Uncommon Chivalry, hangs in the Museum of Flight in Seattle. Powerful image.
It makes you think about the whole thing differently,
Yeah.
All those stories, all that sacrifice, and then these moments of, grace.
Exactly. Makes you wonder, what makes someone choose compassion in the middle of all that hate and violence?
No easy answers, that's for sure.
But it's those stories, those individual moments that really make history come alive, They remind us that even in war, there's still humanity, there's still hope. That even in the darkest times, we're capable of extraordinary things, both good and bad. And that's what this deep dive has been all about, really. Looking beyond the battles, remembering the people, their stories, their sacrifices. Because those stories, they matter. They remind us who we are, where we've been, and hopefully they can guide us towards a better future. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.